Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotartha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtotartha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to start something new. Can I have one of those sheets with the, yeah. So, assuming that many of you, even those who have been around a while, may not know what all these words mean, and we didn't read the English. So I'm going to read the English translation, and then, since it's real short, I'll just go through each thing so that you can know what each word means. Next time we sing it, maybe you'll get the image in your head. Okay, the meaning of this little song, which is, I think, I don't know if it's complete or there's more verses to it, but we probably would always sing this. Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens of Braja, and he is the holder of the great hill named Govardhan. He is the beloved son of Mother Yashoda, the delighter of the inhabitants of Braja, and he wanders in the forests along the banks of the river Yamuna. So Jaya, Hare Krishna. Oh, this is the lady side. Sorry, yeah. You might be more, you can sit here, or you want to sit on a nice, yeah, be more comfortable on the bench. So Jaya means all glories to Radha Madhava. Madhava is another name for Krishna. Kunja Bihari. Bihari means one who enjoys. So he enjoys in the kunja. What are the kunja? The gardens, the idyllic places in Vrindavan, nice for pastimes. Gopi Jana, the Gopi people, the gopis. Vallabha, he is the beloved of all the gopis. Vallabha means beloved. Giri Varadhari, gopis are cowherd girls. Giri means hill, and Vara means the best. The best of hill is Govardhan. And Dhari means one who holds up. Like this temple is called Govardhan, and the deity is Giridhari, right? So it's exactly like this. The best tale, Girivaridhari. Yashoda, Krishna's mother. Nandana, beloved of Yashoda, beloved child, boy. Brajas is another way of saying Vraja or Vrindavan. Jana, the people in Vrindavan. Ranjana, he delights them all with his pastimes and his loving exchange. Yamuna, now the name of the river is Yamuna, right, with a long A at the end. But because this is of the Yamuna, the long A at the end becomes short, and the second A becomes long. So it's Yamuna. But don't worry too much about that, just to let you know. Tira means on the bank. Vana means, again, the forest. So Chari, he enjoys pastimes in the forest on the bank of the Yamuna. So that's what this little song means. So next time we sing it, or you can probably access it online and work on it and go review it, so that next time we sing it, the meaning will come out as we sing it, which is always best. Okay, so let me just this little recorder on here, and this is okay. All right, and we're on text 23. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, on this 8th day of July 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying chapter 5 entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Text number 23 in the middle of page 250. So I'll go, since we have some new people, I'll go one word at a time, and you can, this way you get an idea of what it sounds like. Shaknoti haiva yakshodhum prak sharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sa yukta sa sukhi naraha shaknoti haiva yaksodhum praksharir vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha shaknoti haiva yaksodham praksharir vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha shaknoti haiva yaksodham praksharir vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha. Shaknoti haiva yaksodham praksharir vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha. Shaknoti haiva yaksodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. Praknoti haiva yaksodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. Go ahead, Asha. Shaknoti haiva yaksodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sasuki naraha. Do you want to try it? Go ahead. Shaknoti haiva yaksodham parira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasuki naraha. Okay, anyone online? They may be online, but not on Zoom, so they can't chat, right? That happens. Okay, I'll read the word by word. You just follow along silently. Shaknoti is able. Iha eva, in the present body. Yaha, one who. Sodhum, to tolerate. Prak, before. Sharira, the body. Vimokshanat, giving up. Kama, desire. Krodha, and anger. Udbhavam, generated from. Vegam, urges. Saha hi yuktaha, in trance. Saha hi sukhi, happy. Naraha, human being. Okay. Translation. Krishna says to Arjuna, before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. Purport. If one wants to make steady progress on the path of self-realization, he must try to control the forces of the material senses. There are the forces of talk, forces of anger, forces of mind, forces of the stomach, forces of the genitals, and forces of the tongue. One who is able to control the forces of all these different senses and the mind is called a Goswami or Swami. Such Goswamis live strictly controlled lives and forego altogether the forces of the senses. Material desires, when unsatiated, generate anger, and thus the mind, eyes, and chest become agitated. Therefore, one must practice to control them before one gives up this material body. One who can do this is understood to be self-realized and is thus happy in the state of self-realization. It is the duty of the transcendentalist to try strenuously to control desire and anger. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, in these verses, there's of course a context always. And this, basically the last two verses, beginning with text 21, which goes back to 22 because he's describing something. So, text 22, I'll just read the translation to the verses up to the one we read. A person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon attaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent, who is unbewildered, and who knows the science of God, is already situated in transcendence. Such a liberated person is not attracted to material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme. And then text 22, which has become my favorite verse in the Bhagavad Gita. An intelligent person, now this your translation may be slightly different here. An intelligent person does not take part in pleasures which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the sources of misery and have a beginning and an end. And so the wise man does not delight in them. And then today's verse, Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and is happy in this world. Did I do Om Jnana? Sorry. So, what's being expressed here? Krishna is, in his presentation in the Bhagavad Gita, he is faced with trying to convince Arjuna that he should fight in this battle. It's a very dramatic situation. If you read the first chapter, you see that there's two vast armies massed and ready to fight. And Arjuna is the main fighter on one side, let's say on the side of virtue. And he has Kṛṣṇa as his chariot driver, which is unusual. I mean, Krishna is God, but he's also the best friend of Arjuna. And when Arjuna's greatest rival is Duryodhana on the other side. The Duryodhana and his brothers, they were trying to claim the kingdom which rightly belonged to Arjuna and his brothers. And it became a huge struggle. And it's culminating now in this battle or war, if you will, of Kurukshetra. But Arjuna has doubts when he asks Kṛṣṇa, who's on his chariot as his chariot driver, please take my chariot between the two armies. I want to see who's on the other side and who we have to fight with. So he does that, and on the other side, he sees primarily, the first one he sees is his beloved grandfather figure, Bhishma Dev, who helped to raise him and his brothers when they were orphaned at a very young age. And he's very virtuous. He's actually a devotee, although he's on the other side. And then there's also his teacher, Dronacharya, who taught him the art of fighting. You know, in the Vedas, there's various departments. There is a large department which is the transcendental, the Bhagavad Gita and other books like the Upanishads, teaching us how we can realize ourselves as purely spiritual beings and ultimately end the round of birth and death and return back to the spiritual world. That's a large part of the literature, of which this Bhagavad Gita is the main part. So Arjuna is the eternal friend of Kṛṣṇa. He's a very intimate friend, a great devotee, very advanced, both materially and spiritually. Now, he studied this Dhanurveda under Dronacharya. There's also Ayurveda. You can get certified in California now to practice Ayurveda, which simply means the science or the knowledge of how to prolong your life. You know, Ayur means the length of life. So it's a system of medicine. And then there's also Jyotirveda, which you can read the stars, the science of astrology. And so therefore the Vedic Vedas are said to be like a big desire tree. Desire tree means a special tree which is in the heavenly planets or in the spiritual world, where you can go and you can get any fruit you want, or anything you want. Prabhupada said you can get kachoris also if you really want. Yeah. How did you forget? Been a while. Yeah, you can either, that's it, yeah. So anyway, there's all of these departments of knowledge, and Kṛṣṇa is teaching Arjuna in this Bhagavad Gita the supreme knowledge. In the 9th chapter, we'll see this is the Raja Vidya, the king of knowledge. That's the first words in the chapter, or the second verse. So Arjuna, you know, he's a wonderful servant of Kṛṣṇa. They're good friends. But when he sees not only his beloved guru and his beloved grandfather and so many other friends on the other side, because the same big family was split up on either side. And he suddenly is having trouble getting his will up, his desire to fight. I mean, he's fought in many battles before and always came out victorious. But here he is, he doesn't want to kill his grandfather, he doesn't want to kill his teacher, and so many other friends and relatives on the other side, plus on his own side. So the whole thing is now, he argues in the first chapter, and it's part of the second chapter, according to the Vedas, that why should I fight this battle? I don't want this kingdom if it's soaked with the blood of the people who I love. What kind of victory is that going to be? You see? Plus, I'll be responsible partially responsible, largely responsible for the deaths of so many thousands and thousands of men, making their wives widows, and they may become corrupted, and the whole society will be hurt by that. And so he's seeing all kinds of reasons why he doesn't want to fight. But Krishna wants him to fight. And so this is because Krishna's plan is to reinstitute Dharma in the world. The word Dharma, as Prabhupada said, I just heard him say it on the tape. If you look up Dharma in the English dictionary, it means religion. You see? And what is a religion? Religion's a kind of faith. But Dharma is not a kind of faith. The root of the word Dharma is Dri, the same word, Dari, holding up, you know. That's the so what is it? So Dri means what is it that sustains everything? Everything has a dharma, just like that bench, those benches. Our good friend Joey, who I just ran into riding his motorcycle down the alley, he contributed for all these benches, you know, and it's a nice service because they're very comfortable. And so now, if you sit on that bench, right, you expect it to hold you up, but if it suddenly collapses, it's not performing its dharma, which is to be a nice seat. And you look at everything that has its dharma, you know. So what is our dharma as souls? That's the real thing. What is our real dharma? And a real dharma is to serve. Well, how is that, you see? If you think about it, even if you're just, you don't know anything about Krishna consciousness, you're just leading an ordinary life, you're serving. You get up in the morning, and if you're a parent, you have to get up and give your kids breakfast before they go off to school. And then you may have to have a job you need to do in order to help pay the rent. And then, of course, the husband is also serving. He's serving the boss so he can get the money so he can do it. So when you think about it, and even just in your ordinary life, suppose it's the weekend, you don't have to go to work, you know. But don't you have to eat? You're serving the stomach, right? Because the first idea is that we're not the body. We're not the body. So what are we? This is the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. We are the soul. The soul is that particle of consciousness. And the wonderful thing about the soul is, you know, and also part of our entanglement, is that we're never born and we never die. We're eternal. Nobody dies, but the body dies. I'll give the poem a little later. Every body dies, nobody dies, right? Every single body dies, nobody dies. Wake up, and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. But the problem is that practically every living entity in creation is in the bodily concept of life, right? The dogs don't think I'm a soul. They think I'm a dog, right? And they probably don't even think I'm a dog. I'm a dog. So I bark and do what the dogs do. So below so the soul, we're now a soul in the human body. But it's important to recognize that the human body is rare amongst all the living beings in this world. I like to point out, you go to any lawn nearby here. It's hard to find a lawn. If you find one, it's probably AstroTurf. But if you actually find a lawn, there's some of them. There's thousands and thousands of living entities there. Each blade of grass is a living entity. And what is the consciousness of the blade of grass? I hope I get some water. I hope no one steps on me. That's basically it. If they get watered nicely and the sun shines, my life is good, right? They don't even think that; they just feel it. So now the thing is that in the blade of grass is that soul, and eventually, not too long. I don't know what the lifespan of a blade of grass is. Not too long. So then he goes up the line. This is real evolution. Not that the bodies are evolving, but that the consciousness of the soul evolves as you come up to the human form. Now there are higher beings who live on higher planets than human, and they live for a much longer time. They have bigger intelligence, but they're just souls just like us. But in the human form, especially because there's an impetus to trying to end the birth, old age, disease, and death on the heavenly planets. You forget about it. Oh, I'll be here for 10,000 years enjoying like anything. Why do I have to worry? So we don't want to go to heaven. We want to go back to Godhead. We want to go to the eternal kingdom of God, where there's no birth, no death, and we're reinstated in our original relationship with Krishna, with God. as his eternal servants. And we shouldn't think, well, okay, so servant means I'm always giving pleasure to God. What about me? But the wonderful thing is that service to Krishna, because he's all attractive, he's the reservoir of all pleasure, he reciprocates, and that is the highest pleasure. And that comes up, and I just like to review these two verses, which are so important, 21 and 22. So 21 says, Bhaya sparshe svasaktatma vindityatma yat sukham sab brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshnayam ashnute. So this is a liberated person who is not attracted by material sense pleasure, but is always in trance, enjoying the pleasure within. In this way, the self-realized person enjoys unlimited happiness, for he concentrates on the Supreme, and Supreme is short for Supreme Lord, Supreme God. So, bhaya sparseshu means the external touch of the senses. You see, we have these senses, the eyes, ears, nose, everything. And we get pleasure, we try to get pleasure by contact, we can also get pain that way, but so he's not attracted to that kind of pleasure because you're enjoying the happiness within. Atmani, Vindit is enjoying, and Sukham is happiness. So how is that? Because God is in our heart. He's also there as the super soul. So when we contact him through thinking, glorifying, serving, remembering, then we link up to the flow of spiritual pleasure, which is there, which obviates this sense gratification. You know, actually, as we go through life, you can see the your desires evolve, right? The little kids, right? They have the thing that when I always point out, forgive me because I have a certain number of analogies. I became seriously addicted to these little chocolate kisses. Did I think they still? I mean, like 4, 5, 6, 7. You know, that was one of my main pleasures. There was always a little basket of those at home. You know, and I would. And so many other little things, you know. I remember when TVs came about. I'm old enough. We had a black and white TV. One of the main shows was Howdy Doody, and I was fascinated with that. And then there were like 3 or 4 news channels: ABC, NBC, CBS, 3 news channels, and you got all your news through there. So that became a whole new, you know, source of pleasure, sense pleasure, watching Maverick or whatever I was watching. You know. So the point is that as human beings, we have all our senses intact, and without a higher instruction, you know, and that we're going to get involved with becoming attracted to the different kinds of sense pleasure, and they evolve as we get older, obviously, but it's still there. And as came out in this verse we studied today, that when your desires are frustrated, you become angry, you know, and if you can't express your anger, you turn it inward, and you become depressed. You know, and then your parents want to take you to the psychiatrist, you know, and the idea is that they want to give you a chance to re-evolve from the mode of ignorance to passion, ignorance to the mode of passion, where you'll again be involved in sense gratification. But that's not going to help you, because the whole point is that we have a mission to perform, and that is that we want to transfer our enjoyment of the external senses to the enjoyment of the internal, you see, and that's what's happening in text 21. Sab Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. The Atma is the soul. Yukta is linked in yoga. Yoga is practically the same word, yoke, to Brahma. Now Brahma, you have to watch out for your A's. Brahma is the creator, you know, but Brahma, as it's spelled here in second line, text 21, is God, is Krishna. In other words, the Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And linked in yoga means the devotional service. Then what do you, Sukham Akshayam Ashnute, you enjoy unbreakable happiness, pleasure. Where do you find that? Sukham is happiness in the material sphere. There is no such thing. We're hoping that we can find that, but there's no such thing. Whatever pleasure you're going to have, it's going to come to an end. And if it's some kind of, you know, alcohol or drugs or something, it's called severe damage to you. I have a friend, you know, I take a walk every day. I learn a lot on the walk. I walk up Cass, and it's literally up, you know. It's a little bit of an incline, so I'm chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And there's this one fellow named John, who's homeless. But he's not, you know, the last thing he wants to do is lie down in the street. I never see him that. He's always sitting down, you know. And there's this wonderful student. She may be online right now. She was a student of this class, which was going on since '89. And she would come every day, you know. But then when the pandemic came, she stopped coming, and then we got it, but she's online. You can hear it on YouTube. So she may be there. I think she's there. But she goes out. She buys books. We have the books, some of them the small books. And she goes out. She doesn't sell them. She gives them out to people who are interested. So she gave them out to John. She went up that way, and John got some books, So I came, I was walking up there, and I usually say good morning to everyone, not freak them out, with a Hare Krishna. Good morning. And I get some nice good mornings back. So I said good morning to him and said, good morning, And then he stopped me. He said, you didn't mention her name. I don't think you knew her name. He said, one of your people, gave me a book. And he told her that he sees one of you come and take the walk. He's referring to me. And so she knew I was coming. She said, oh yeah, he's my teacher. He said, oh yeah. So he bought one or two books, small books. And then, so he's reading them, and he thought maybe some others would be able to read them. So, in this church, one of the churches, I think it's the Christ Lutheran Church, they have one of these little boxes where you can put your old books and people can take them. So he put it in there. And then, after a day or so, he wanted to check it again. It was gone, because that's what happens with those books, which is good. That means somebody's reading it. So anyway, he told me this story. He said, oh, I'll get you some more books. I'll replace the books, So I got him just a more small pack of 4 small books, and I eventually gave it to him. So he's an interesting soul, because where he sits, it's always near one of the churches. He's obviously a godly-minded soul, especially after reading those books. But the poor fellow is addicted to cigarettes. I always see him smoking the cigarettes, And we also had experience. You remember Padmavati? Maybe it was before your time. Anyway, she would come to this class. She would often come alone. And I'd say, Padmavati, I can't give a class to just one lady, So I'd try to bring someone else, So she would drag someone else to the class. But then afterward, she had COPD. Some of you may know what that is, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, from many years of smoking. She joined when she was 45 or something, late, So of course she gave it up. So eventually she died from that. But I won't go into that. But that was a success. Myself and Rajendrananan were there by her bedside chanting Hare Krishna, singing Hare Krishna when she left. So that's the idea. So anyway, let's contrast 21 with 22. So this is Sukha Moksha Mashnate, enjoys unbreakable happiness if you reject sense gratification and you learn how to connect with Krishna through service and thinking. So here's the related verse is 22, one of my favorite verses. Yehi sangsparja bhoga. Bhoga means something you enjoy, and sangsparsha means by contact in the senses. Ja is born of contact of the senses, the implication with the sense objects. That kind of enjoyment, dukkha yone evike, is the source of all misery. Now, why is that? Well, sometimes directly it can be such, because if you're really enjoying something, you may tend to overdo it, like just eating. You eat. Oh, God. How did I do that? And so then you may get sick, or can't eat for a day or something. Or even more horrific is like drugs or alcohol. So you can get addicted. But the main way it's the dukkha yoni is that it brings you back to another birth, because whatever you think of or you do in your life, you're enjoying something, that plants a desire seed in your mind to do it again. It's enjoyable, and then if the chance comes again, you'll do it again. So when we die, means when we don't die, but the body dies. So when the body finally gives out, it's just a complicated machine, a wonderful machine, but it's a machine. So when finally it breaks down, or for whatever reason, some accident or some disease or war, so what happens? So it becomes untenable for us to stay in there anymore. So the soul leaves the body. But it doesn't just leave the body alone. There's this subtle body that we've been making, our mind, intelligence, and ego. That carries the soul to the next body. And within that mind are all these unfulfilled desires. There may also be some, remembrances of terrible things that happened to us. All of this mix is there. But that's the template for your next body. And it's made very clear in the Shastra, in our bigger book like the Srimad Bhagavatam, that if you live basically an animalistic life, just trying to enjoy the senses and, you know, and not cultivating any higher knowledge or any higher emotion like compassion or anything, then you'll very likely lose the human form of life and be cast down into like dogs or cats or something like that. So that's a tragedy for the soul, because it's rare to come to the human form of life, and the human form of life is the junction by which we can cultivate this knowledge and practice, by which we can make this our last birth in this world. And we can return to our real home. Prabhupada, thousands of times, he said, go back home, back to Godhead. He started a weekly magazine, it became a monthly. I worked on it in 75 to 79. And Back to Godhead was the name of the magazine, you see. Huh? Yeah, it's still available. Yeah. And so that was the first thing he was publishing. And then a friend told him, you know, books will last longer. People, they tend to, and his magazine was no color. It was just like newsprint, you know, he didn't have any money. So he took that to heart, and he worked really hard to produce 3 hardback volumes of a major work, which are really our main scripture, called the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto. And it was 3 major volumes, because he wrote a lot of commentary, explanation. He really didn't know how much he was going to get a chance. So he put everything in there. If you read the first canto, you get a full lesson. And once he had those books printed, then he felt, this is like he was already 68 years old, but his spiritual master had ordered him and, you know, said, why don't you go to the West, go to America, or go to the English-speaking country and spread Krishna consciousness, because he was known as someone who could write nicely in English. He was born in Bengali, and that was the original language. So he gets on this, he got a free passage on a cargo ship named the Jaladuta, the water messenger. And this was in August of 65. So he leaves from Calcutta. I think he picked up the books in another port. And then he's off, you know, through the Suez Canal and all those different things. Very rough, because he'd never been on a boat. It was a cargo ship, you know, there was a cabin there for him. But he had so much seasickness, and he had 2 heart attacks. And he wrote in his diary, he knew if he had another one, he'd be finished. So in his dream, Krishna comes to him in his dream. And he says, don't worry, I'm going to take charge of the boat, you know. You just, you know. So he gets up, and now he's through the Suez Canal, and they're getting into the, of course, Mediterranean, and then into the Atlantic. Now, I have to, you know, I lived in Miami for 6 years, so I was very conscious of when the hurricane season comes, right? And it's, you know, July, August, and into September. So he's in the middle of the ocean in the middle of August. And it could easily be huge storms, but it was just like a calm lake. It was an amazing crossing. So much so, and I love this, that the captain's wife, he had his wife with him on this trip. He said, Swami, can you please come back with us on the way back? This is the best crossing we've ever had. So peaceful, you know. So Prabhupada came to America. He didn't have any friends. He had like $12 in his pocket, you know, worth of rupees. And but Krishna, you know, guided him here and there. And finally, he established himself in the Lower East Side, Manhattan. Now, this is the middle of the 60s, and the whole hippie thing was going on, and the Beatles, you know, George Harrison was singing "My Dear Lord," you know, which is about Krishna. And so he found a receptive audience in that Lower East Side, and then planted the seeds, and it grew to the worldwide what it is now. And these books, you know, getting this Bhagavad Gita out was a major ambition of Srila Prabhupada's. And I had the good fortune not to work on the original one, but to work on you know, maintaining it and making little corrections on it. But I've been giving this class for over 35 years now. On this Bhagavad Gita, we've been through a few times. It never gets old. It never gets... We did that book already. Why don't we do something else? Mark Twain or something. Yeah. So, just to finish this verse. Those who are wise, the Buddha, the last verse, word of the verse, they don't take their pleasure in these things. They know that they're have a beginning and an end and the source of all misery. So where did they get the pleasure? The previous verse. By contacting the Supreme Brahman, Krishna, through all the senses and the mind. And I can vouch for you. You know, it's been 52 years I've been chanting this Hare Krishna mantra and practicing Krishna consciousness, and it never gets old. It's not like can't we sing something else, you know? No. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. And it by, you know, it proves that it's not an ordinary sound. But that there's a certain progress you could make in the chanting, so that you really feel more and more the presence of Krishna in his name. And this is one of the, you know, so many inconceivable things about Krishna consciousness. But the first one to try to get your mind around is that Krishna and his name are non-different. Now, you know, you say, well, I can't see God. How do I know he exists? Chant his name. Can you hear? You say, okay, chant his name. And if you chant and you try to hear, you know, just those two things, you'll feel the effect. You'll feel the calming effect, and a certain pleasure happens, and especially if you get in a nice big kirtan and chanting and dancing, you know. And it's the same old mantra, you know. It's been, I only know it for 54 years or whatever it is, 52 years. But, you know, there were devotees who were even, Bhajan Swami joined in 1969, 4 years ahead of me, at age 17. And it inevitably, if you practice the process of bhakti yoga according to the rules and regulations, you'll feel the effect. And you can really, you know, hope. And the wonderful thing that's so encouraging, it says, how does it start? Swapamapya siddharmasya trayate matobhayat. What is it? Yes, thank you. Nehabhikamanashati pratyavayo navidyate swapamapya siddharmasya trayate matobhayat. Na iya abhikramanashosti. In this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. Now, Kathy, how long have you been coming? A couple of months? 3 months?
Since January.
Okay, it's more than that. Time. Congratulations. But you know, so now you're an old timer now. You've been here for a few months. But isn't it enlivening to think, okay, whatever I've done in this regard, maybe, you know, let's face it, I may not actually go back to Godhead in this one life, but you don't lose anything. Everything it's there in your subtle body, and in your next life, you're sure to get a human form, and you're sure to get a chance to keep practicing. So that's encouraging, but it's also encouraging, well, let's try to complete the course. You know, it's possible. So this is the idea, is that the more that we can, it's a sublimation. You know, I love that word, sublimate. So, because in psychology, that they try to sublimate your lower, you know, bad habits into something constructive, right? And I mean, even parents know that of their children, you know. The kid has so much energy to do this. Well, why don't you come and do the same energy and wash the dishes for me? You know. My mother, I used to do. Me and my brother, we had turns. We took turns washing the dishes. But anyway, it's a genuine process, and there's a whole philosophy behind it. And I'm so happy you're here on this Taco Tuesday. Okay, we did 23 also, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, okay, let's go on to 24. Yontak sukontar aramas tatanta jyotirevayaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto digacchati. Now this is the phrase Brahma Nirvana starts coming up again and again in the verses now. We're getting to the end of the chapter. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. And I just want to let you know, because we have a majority of ladies here, is that Prabhupada, of course, English was his second language. He learned English in Calcutta. He went to Scottish Churches College, you know. So he would use the he, you know, the he pronoun, but it meant human beings, obviously, you know. And so I just want to let you know that he or she. Unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. He can, therefore, sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external material happiness. This state is called Brahma Bhuta, attaining which one is assured of going back to Godhead, back to home. And I'd just like to add here. You know, Krishna consciousness is, you know, of course, rooted in India. And there are different sampradayas or lines that come down, the genuine lines of teachings based on Bhagavad Gita is there, you know, and the Vedas, you know, different Puranas, especially Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam. And so there's a whole culture of this, and there have been such wonderful authors, writers in our line. Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, there's 6 Goswamis. Those are 2 of the main writers. And I'll just tell you some of my experience. You know, my father was a drummer, and I inherited his genes from rhythm. Even as a little boy in 2nd grade, you know, I was a smarty pants. So I finished my little work early, you know, and I started just beating on the drum, on the desk. I would just... And my father, bless his soul, he introduced me to music at an early age, 5 or 6. I started playing the recorder, a little kind of flute instrument. Mozart wrote some nice works from the recorder. And eventually went to school. I started playing the clarinet all through school and high school. I was in the orchestra and the band. And then I graduated, and I will say luckily, but anyway, I'm in the middle of the Vietnam War era, you know, and I was a staunch anti-war demonstrator. You know, you may look at the history, you know. So that kind of got in the way of my education. I was very smarty pants in high school, and I got into Chicago University, full scholarship. My brother was there, and he had just graduated. But by that time, I was so into anti-war stuff, I thought I was going to turn my draft card in and go to jail and all this stuff. I just couldn't get into the whole mood of the so I dropped out. I left New York just when Prabhupada came. I grew up in Long Island, and so I went to school in September of '65, and Prabhupada arrived in New York in September of '65. But I came back to New York in January of '66. But I wasn't at all into spiritual life. I was raised as an Orthodox communist. My father used to read the Das Kapital. You know, anyone knows it by Marx and Engels. They wrote the big book at the dinner table at night. He would pull it out of the closet because he thought the FBI was going to come after him. He wasn't so far off of that. But anyway, and he would read that to me. You know. So it wasn't that I was just not religious. I thought that God is the opium of the people. You know, religion is the opium of the people. That's something that's, you know, it's actually very bad. So that's where I'm coming from. Anyway, to make a long story short, I got a serious case of hepatitis when I lived on the Lower East Side. And I came back, and I was in the hospital for a month, you know, and my life had just come to pretty much zero. This was 1969, July. You know, a very famous thing happened then? Landing on the moon. I saw that on TV, all black and white, you know. That was enlivening to me. It's like, you know, but anyway. So I came out of that. My parents were very kind to take me back home. So I said, I got to have some kind of way to get my health back, you know. And by that time, I started to get interested in Eastern music, Ravi Shankar and all this stuff. And so I was saying, well, let me try that yoga stuff. That yoga just meant hatha yoga, you know. So I looked into the yellow pages. The younger people probably don't know what the yellow pages are. I mean, there was no phone, you know, cell phones or anything. So it was a list of all the businesses. So I'm in Long Island. The closest place was in Manhattan. So I started driving in there, and the teacher's name was Shiva Prem. But it was all just stretching and bending, you know. And amazingly enough, after I left that ashram, went to a different one and started doing yoga there, he got disenchanted with his guru, you know, who was just, it was all just stretching and bending. It was really, there's nothing like this. And he would come once or twice a year and demand that, it's on the Upper East Side of New York, so rent me a penthouse for a month. Like $5,000, you know, a month. And so, okay, you know, and then he would come, and I went to see him. You went to see the guru. And you could go in, and if you paid $15, you could get an interview. And if you paid $50, you can get initiated, you know. I paid $15. And I got I got the interview. So I was disenchanted with the whole thing. I went to another ashram, and eventually I joined up Hare Krishna. But this Shiva Prem, he also became disenchanted. So he went across town. We had a big building at that time, on 55th Street, Hare Krishna Temple. And 11 stories high. And he heard a lecture from one of the most empowered sannyasis, Vidyananda Das Goswami. And he became, he was convinced. And he wanted how to leave his, so he snuck down the stairs. He thought they would try to, force him to stay with a big suitcase, and he got out. And he showed up in LA. He came to Los Angeles. His mother was living there, and he was figuring out, what am I going to do now? So this was now 75. I joined in 73, but I'm living in LA working on books. And so a big temple complex there. And I'm in the prasadam hall, where we take prasadam. And there's Shiva Prem Swami. So there was one devotee named Danavir who was in charge of the bhaktas. He wrote a nice book called Fortunate Souls, all about training up new devotees. So I took him aside. Look at this guy. I know this guy. He's a yoga teacher in New York. He probably must be coming here trying to get our bhaktas. So he said, all right, I'll talk to him. So he talked to him, and he found that he wanted to become a bhakta. So he became Amala Bhakta. Amala Bhakta means servant of the pure devotee of Srila Prabhupada. And then, and I'll send you this if I know it's getting late, he came over to my office where I work on BTG, and he said, I want to tell my story of how I left and came Krishna conscious. So he told it all to me, and I turned it into an article, which was very graphic and very instructive, how he left that bogus situation and came to the general thing. And then he became Amala Bhakta Swami, and he now a devotee. He's still around. I mean, he's in his mid-90s by now. He's living in LA, yeah. And he made some wonderful recordings of the Shastra. All right, so I've used up all the time practically, so I'll end with a little poem, which is kind of my signature. And let's see. So I'm not sure how much you know about Krishna, but Krishna has his Leela. It means play. What would you do if you were God? Wouldn't you play all day? You don't have to work, you play, right? So he plays all day. And in the spiritual world, so does everyone else. They may look like they're working, but they're all thinking of Krishna, they're enjoying like anything. So he has his pastimes. So one of them is that he wants his mother to suckle him. He's really young, and he stops her from churning the butter because it's all a farm community with cows and everything. So he's churning away, and he grabs the pole. He says, "No, So, okay, so she's suckling, but then she remembers, I have this milk on the stove, that is special milk that I'm making for Krishna because he's stealing all the milk products from the other. Maybe he's not happy with our milk." So she puts him down and she goes there, but he gets upset because he was enjoying the milk, So he breaks the pot and he runs. Then he's running. He's just like 5 years old, He runs into, one of these storage places for the other gopis, and he steals some yogurt and butter, and he starts feeding it to the monkeys, So Mother Yashoda comes back after setting the pot right, and she says, "What's this? The whole pot is broken?" And then she sees the little butter-smeared footprints. This is in the, right? So she follows, and she comes up, she's got a stick. She's going to discipline. And he notices her, and he gets down, and he starts running. So there's this whole thing where he's running, and she's running behind him, So eventually she catches him, and he's scared because he's got the stick, so she throws the stick away. And then she's got to bind him. This is what they do, to tie him up, so she can do her duties, and he won't get into them. So he ties her up to a grinding mortar. And so I wrote a little poem describing this. At last Yashoda caught her naughty child, who'd smashed the pot of yogurt in a pique. Though seemingly annoyed, she felt beguiled by little Krishna's loving charm unique. "Oh imp, I've caught you now, but do not fear. You see, I've thrown the stick upon the floor. But I must bind you with this rope, my dear, lest you increased your mischief more and more. And so Yashoda bound her little son, who hid his glory to evoke her love. The blessings she enjoyed are never won by gods and goddesses who dwell above. So there's a painting for that. All of these little poems were written with a painting in mind. So I usually go on, and then we're too late. So we have to stop now and get ready for the artik. And please stay, because you'll be able to see beautiful Radha Giridhari and chant Hare Krishna with us.